Moza's latest wheelbase releases topped their line with the R25 Ultra, and this one that we have here, the R21 Ultra. With up to 21 Newton meters of sustained torque and a new zero-cogging flat wire technology, this $700 wheelbase marks a new era in smoothness from one of the more affordable wheelbase manufacturers, Moza. So what's this experience like, and is it worth the price tag? Well, today we're going to start to find out. In this first look, we'll go through the design, the Moza Pit House app and settings, and I'll share some of my experiences so far in ACC, iRacing, drifting in AC, AC Evo, and of course, some Forza Motorsport. And by the end, hopefully you have a good idea of what you can expect from the R21 and whether or not it's something that you'll want to keep on your wish list or pick up for yourself. And thanks to Moza for sending this over for us to check out. They're not sponsoring this. They have no say in what we say about the wheelbase, but if you do decide to purchase one, there is an affiliate link down in the description, which will help support the channel a little bit. So first off, we're going to start by highlighting some of the features, and the first one that's the most notable to me is that zero-cogging flat wire technology. This was immediately noticeable as a difference from the older R16 that I have been using. And basically what that means, if you are just very gently moving the wheel like this, on some of Moza's other wheels, like the R16 a little bit, and definitely the R3, you would feel a little bit of kind of notchiness as you rotated the wheel. And you can still feel just the slightest bit, but it is so far improved from the R16 and just miles ahead of the entry-level R3. Additionally, the R21 can deliver a constant 21 Newton meters of sustained torque. Now, I'm not really one who's going to be testing that to its limits because I have really skinny wrists and I don't want to snap them, but it's more about having that extra headroom, and so you aren't using the entire power of the motor, as you can get a little bit more detail throughout that power band. But if you are a hulkish driver and you want to test that and you want to push it to the limits, the R21 will be able to sustain those numbers. All right, now let's take a quick look at the design, because I do believe it is an improvement over the R16. If you've seen the R16, it had a much more supercar-inspired design, which just looked unnecessary. And so this, the R21 Ultra and the R25 Ultra, are more in line with some of Moza's other more affordable wheelbases. It's just a little bit simpler, a little bit more boxy. There are still some rounded edges, a little bit rounder more than compared to some of Moza's other wheelbases, but in general, I just like that it's a simpler wheelbase. Of course, on the back are all the input ports for pedals, a dashboard, a shifter, handbrake, and an emergency stop switch. Then you just have a single cable that runs to your PC. It's designed to be mounted to a variety of different rigs. It doesn't come with a desk mount at all, which this would be a lot of power to have on your desk, but it is able to mount on the bottom, which is how we have it mounted on my GT Omega Titan cockpit here. You can also do side mounts or front mount as well. Another interesting, and I would argue unnecessary, design feature is the RGB on the side of the wheelbase. You can see it right here. As I turn this wheelbase off and back on, you can see that it is something that is it's not just one zone of RGB. There are quite a few different zones. So as it powers back on here, you'll see how it populates throughout that entire thing. So there are some interesting things you could do there if you want to, configure it to do some RGB things. I think by default, it's just matching your rev counter up here on top of your wheel. And so that'll kind of go and spike depending on your revs. But when you're sitting in the cockpit, it's not really something you see. So this is only for streamers, content creators, or if you're just watching somebody else play. It doesn't really give the driver any enhanced experience. But beyond that, my only real issue with the design of the wheelbase is actually more of an issue just with the GT Omega Titan cockpit. This wheelbase, the distance from where it mounts to where the quick release is a little bit shorter, so the wheel is sitting a little bit further away from me. So I had hoped that I could push my pedals back further, but the way I have it mounted on here with the adjustable sliders for the pedals, I have it maxed out. And so everything feels a little bit close to me. I would like to be able to push the pedals back. I like to have the wheel closer to me. But like I said, that's just an issue really with the Titan. That's not really with the wheelbase at all. All right, so now let's move on and we'll take a look inside of Moza Pit House, because of course there are a ton of different tweaks you can make here. All right, so one of the nice things, Moza has this whole catalog of built-in presets that ship with the wheel when you basically install it. And they have different pre-configured settings for AC, for ACC, Dirt Rally, EA, WRC, F1 games, Forza Horizon 5, iRacing, LMU, And then you can, of course, take those, adjust them, and make your own if you want. But it does give you a kind of nice starting point. When you want to make some adjustments, though, you can, of course, change your steering angle, soft limit stiffness, and one of the biggest things here is changing the game force feedback intensity, so that really is how powerful the wheel is. Then there's the professional game force feedback intensity, which says can be used to further increase game force feedback intensity up to 200%. Please increase gradually to avoid injury. You can put a maximum output torque limit. You can, of course, change a bunch of different things here too. Steering wheel inertia, maximum wheel speed. Under the advanced settings are quite a few other tweaks to little things that Moza has built in here. Now, I know some other sim racers like to just take these all down to 0 and just, use what the sims are giving you. So, take this with a grain of salt, what you want to have your settings. This is, I believe I'm using, the iRacing official. Then you have things like the force feedback effect equalizer. So there are different things if you want to turn them up or down, what kind of feedback you're getting, like ABS vibration. You can change the curb effects at different speeds, high frequency vibrations. So quite a bit of different things there that you can do. Base force feedback curve. So if you want to adjust where it feels more intense, that's something that you can play around with in there. A couple of miscellaneous settings. Then the base LED, if you want to make any tweaks to it, you can. Like I said, right now we have it on telemetry. And you can change the brightness, which actually I guess pretty bright. I'm kind of surprised it wasn't at 100% already. And then there's quite a few different things in here. Right now it just says RPM standard color. So I'm just gonna leave it at that because like I said, you can't really see it. Now, I'm not gonna go through and give you, like my recommended settings for any certain title or anything like that yet, because I don't feel like I've spent enough time with it to really have everything dialed in. I wanna play around with some more things. I've been jumping around through a lot of different games, just kind of testing it out and seeing how it feels. So we will do a more in-depth, full-length review where I can talk about some of those different settings that I am using, but this is just kind of like a quick overview and my quick initial first impressions with the R21 Ultra. All right, so with that in mind, let's move on and talk about how this feels when you are actually racing. Like I mentioned, one of the most noticeable things for me has been how smooth this wheelbase is. That zero-cogging flat wire technology that they talk about in here really is noticeable. Like you really don't feel any, or it's just the slightest amount of little like notchiness or cogging in here. And that just gives you a little bit more security knowing that the things that you are feeling are the actual force feedback from the wheel and not, some inherent notchiness in the design. Like I said, this is a noticeable improvement over the R16 and it's a huge improvement over the R3. Could this technology be implemented into some of their lower end wheels? Could there be like an R3 Gen 2? Something like that would be absolutely incredible. All right, so first up here, we're gonna take a look at ACC. And of course, Pithouse has built-in presets for a lot of popular titles. ACC seems like one of the best ones to test out the R21. There are two different stock presets for ACC at the moment, official and one from another racer. Both felt great to me with some of the best tire load feeling that I can remember experiencing in ACC. I had a better grasp of the wheels slipping than I can remember with other wheelbases that I've used in the past. And there's plenty of detail still here for curbs and other on-track feedback. Moving on to iRacing, I have a few hours in iRacing. I'm not the most experienced in iRacing, but immediately one of the things I noticed was the intensity and detail of some of the LFE effects, some of the other effects beyond just the force feedback. By default, these were too intense. I had to turn it down a little bit. I think I turned it down to maybe -7 dB or something like that. But with those settings turned down, driving around in the M2, the wheelbase felt extremely smooth. Once again, that zero-cogging flat wire technology is something that just lets the pure feedback come through because of that smoothness. All right, and now moving on to drifting in AC. Of course, Moza has some built-in presets for this as well. So I dusted off the old content manager and hopped back into the BMW wagon around the clutch kicker's paradise. The smoothness, once again, is great for drifting, but in my opinion, this wheelbase is totally overpowered for drifting. I ended up turning this down to something like 12%, I think. That's where it really felt like it was giving me enough feedback, but not enough that I had to fight it constantly. So of course, your mileage is gonna vary there with how much force you feel like you need when you are drifting. But for me personally, I'm used to a lighter wheel when I am drifting, and so I turned this down quite a bit for that. So it took me a little while to get used to drifting again in AC. It's something I haven't been doing very much recently, but once I did, the wheelbase felt great for it, felt very smooth. lots of good feedback that made it easy to, tell when to transition and grab the wheel and all that good stuff. But some of the most fun that I've been having in any sim right now is driving the E30 in AC Evo. With an older chassis that has quite a bit more flex and roll, you can really take full advantage of the feedback from the wheel. You can feel those wheels loading up, really feel it when it starts to slip, and you have to guide it back and make sure that you're not over-rotating. You combine that with an H-pattern shifter and heel toe on the pedals, and it's some of the most fun that I've been having recently. But where I've spent the most hours with this wheelbase is, of course, in Forza Motorsport, and I know that's not where most people who are spending $700 on a wheelbase are going to be spending a lot of their time, but that's the title that I've been playing quite a bit. And that's also the title that I would have the most experience with on the R16 when comparing it to the R21 Ultra. And immediately one of the first things that I noticed is there is some more detail with some other effects. Mainly, there is an understeer vibration that is pretty intense that I didn't notice on the R16 that I'm finding on the R21. So it really lets you know when you are scrubbing those tires. But then once again, the smoothness on here just really lets you know when the car is slipping, and then lets you catch it as well, and is made for some great racing in Forza Motorsport. Then lastly, when you talk about some of the competition, because this is a 21 Nm torque wheelbase coming in at $700. To get similar power from Fanatec, you need to spend $1,180 for 15 Nm or $1,600 for 25 Nm. From SimMagic, you're looking at $650 for 15 Nm of torque or $900 for 23 Nm of torque. So this does get a little bit closer, but still not quite the same price per power of the Moza wheelbases. So Moza continues to be incredible value in the sim racing ecospace. And we combine that with the massive variety and quick pace of attachments and accessories, new wheelbases, pedals, shifters, dashboards, everything that are coming out with at a pretty incredible rate. It's a really enticing ecosystem to start investing in. So if you haven't noticed it already, I have really been liking the R21 Ultra. It's a pretty big upgrade from the R16, mainly just in that smoothness. You really can feel that difference. And beyond that, it has some crazy power for those who need it. Like I said, I usually keep it turned down a little bit, but if you need some extreme power, this thing can do it. I like the more refined design. I do find the RGB to be a little bit unnecessary, but that's just my opinion. And I'll continue to tweak and play around with this in iRacing and ACC and try to find some settings that I really enjoy for this. We also have the M Booster pedal from Moza that we're working on a review for, so make sure you're subscribed and check that video out when we release it. So I know that I might sound like a shill for Moza with all this praise, but I've used quite a few of their products and I really haven't had any issues. And when you combine that with their affordability and upgradability, with their huge line of different wheels, pedals, shifters, wheelbases, everything, it's a pretty impressive company that's really shaking things up in the sim racing universe. Thanks for watching. Like I said, if you want to pick up this wheelbase, I'll have an affiliate link down in the description that helps out the channel. And yeah, make sure you're subscribed, and we'll see you in the next video.